It began as a quiet Monday afternoon in the Colorado suburbs. 11-year-old Gannon Storch was supposed to be home, playing video games, wrapped in the warmth of routine. But by nightfall, that calm would shatter. His stepmother, Letecha, would call police, her voice trembling as she claimed Gannon had wandered off to play with friends and never came back. Within hours, the neighborhood filled with search crews, flashlights piercing the freezing dark, calling his name into the wind. For days, hope clung to the cold air, neighbors hanging posters, strangers praying he'd just gotten lost. But behind the closed doors of that suburban home, a far darker story was unfolding, one of rage, deceit, and a desperate attempt to bury the truth. What began as a missing child case would unravel into one of the most disturbing domestic crimes in Colorado's history. A story of betrayal so profound, even seasoned detectives would struggle to comprehend it. Because while Gannon's father was serving his country hundreds of miles away, the person meant to protect his son, the woman who had promised to love him as her own, was already plotting how to erase him. Gannon Storch was 11 years old, bright-eyed, gentle, and endlessly curious. He loved video games, especially Fortnite and Minecraft, and spent hours building digital worlds where things made sense, where heroes could respawn and wrongs could be righted. At school, he was quiet but kind, known to help classmates when they fell behind. His biological mother, Landon Hyatt, who lived in South Carolina, described him as my heart, a boy full of light who always tried to see the good in everyone. At home in Colorado, Gannon lived with his father, Al Storch, a National Guard member devoted to his family, and his stepmother, Letecha, whom he once called T. By early January, cracks had begun to show behind the family's picture-perfect exterior. Al was often deployed, leaving Letecha in charge of Gannon and his younger sister. Neighbors noticed she seemed tense, easily frustrated, often snapping at the children in public. Prosecutors would later argue that resentment had been festering beneath the surface. Letecha wanted control of her marriage, her home, and her image. Gannon, in her eyes, was a reminder of everything she couldn't command: Al's loyalty, his ex-wife's presence, and a child who didn't fully belong to her. By the final week of January, those tensions had reached their breaking point. The morning of January 27, 2020, was bitterly cold when Gannon stayed home from school, reportedly feeling sick. Letecha told Al it wasn't serious, just a stomach bug. Later, she would claim he had accidentally burned the carpet with a candle, an odd detail that would later become crucial. Inside the house, surveillance cameras quietly captured fleeting glimpses of movement, time stamps that didn't quite add up. That afternoon, Letecha sent Al messages describing Gannon's supposed bad behavior and her frustration. "I'm just so done," she wrote. "I can't do this anymore." Around 3:30 p.m., neighbors' security cameras recorded Letecha and Gannon leaving the driveway in her red Volkswagen Tiguan. Hours later, she returned alone. Gannon was never seen alive again. When she finally reported him missing that evening, around 6:55 p.m., her tone was oddly detached. She told deputies Gannon had gone to play with a friend and simply hadn't returned. She couldn't name the friend or give an address. Still, officers responded quickly, combing nearby trails, knocking on doors, issuing alerts. The community mobilized overnight, hundreds of volunteers searching in freezing temperatures, flashlights cutting through the dark as they called his name into the wind. But something about Letecia's story felt wrong. As the hours turned into days, her explanations began to shift. First, she said Gannon might have run away. Then, she told investigators that a man she called Iguado, someone she claimed she'd hired to fix a carpet, had raped her at gunpoint and kidnapped Gannon. It was an outrageous story, and detectives immediately knew it didn't add up. There was no forced entry, no physical evidence, no witnesses. Every version of her account seemed designed to distract, to deflect, to buy time. Meanwhile, the search grew desperate. Police dogs scoured snowy hillsides. Volunteers trudged through brush and ice, calling out Gannon's name. Flyers with his smiling face, soft brown hair, blue eyes were taped to lampposts and gas stations. His mother, Landon, had flown from South Carolina, her voice breaking as she told reporters he wouldn't just leave. "My boy is out there somewhere. Please bring him home." Behind the scenes, detectives were uncovering something far darker. Inside the Storch home, investigators found traces of blood beneath Gannon's mattress and splattered faintly along his bedroom wall. In the garage, more blood, small at first, then more pronounced, seeping into the concrete near where Letitia's car had been parked. When confronted, Letitia grew defensive and erratic. Detectives described her mood, swinging wildly, crying one moment, smirking the next. "You're wasting your time," she told one investigator. "He's out there. Someone took him." But the evidence told a different story. Her search history revealed chilling entries. "I hate my stepson. Can parent charges be dropped after a child runs away?" She had rented a car shortly after Gannon vanished. Security footage showed her driving alone, making unexplained stops. The puzzle pieces began to fit. Investigators believed she had killed Gannon in his bedroom, cleaned the scene, and hidden his body in her car. While the world searched, Gannon's remains were already with her locked in the dark of that garage. A few days later, Letitia appeared on camera for a local news interview. She stood outside her home, speaking to reporters with trembling hands. "I would never ever hurt this child," she said. "He's like my own." But her performance struck viewers as off. She seemed more concerned about defending herself than finding Gannon. Two detectives watching, it confirmed what they already suspected. This wasn't grief, it was guilt. Al Storch, still deployed, saw the interview and felt something in his gut collapse. He began working with the FBI, recording phone calls with Letitia in hopes she would reveal the truth. She never confessed outright, but her words painted a picture of someone aware of her own deceit. "My mind was completely gone," she told him. "It was like I was in some Lifetime movie." Days later, when investigators tried to detain her for a DNA sample, Letitia suddenly complained of chest pain. Deputies rushed her to the hospital, but within minutes of checking in, she slipped out a side exit and vanished. By the time police realized she was gone, she had already switched vehicles. Each move she made seemed calculated, as though she were testing how far she could outrun the inevitable. Al returned home to Colorado and cooperated fully with law enforcement, shattered but resolute. The woman he had trusted was now the prime suspect in his son's disappearance. Detectives were convinced Gannon was dead, even without a body. They built a timeline from her phone records, gas receipts, and surveillance footage, clue pointing to deliberate planning, not a moment of madness. Then, about 40 miles south of Colorado Springs, investigators found a piece of particle board streaked with blood. DNA confirmed it belonged to Gannon. The board appeared to have come from inside the Storch home, possibly used to move his body. Prosecutors now believed that after the killing, Letitia had wrapped Gannon in blankets, placed him in a suitcase, and driven out to that rural stretch of land to dump him before returning home to clean the evidence. A week later, her brother, Dakota Lowery, flew in to help her move. He still believed she was innocent till he saw her struggling with one specific suitcase. When he offered to carry it, she snapped, "It's just softball stuff." Dakota later testified that in that moment, he knew. He couldn't prove it, but something deep inside told him his sister had done the unthinkable. By early March, Letitia was on the move, again driving across multiple states, first to Kansas, then to South Carolina, and finally to Florida. Each mile put distance between her and the truth, but investigators were closing in. On March 2, 2020, Letitia Storch was arrested in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, charged with first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, and tampering with a deceased body. At the time of her arrest, Gannon's body still hadn't been found, but detectives were certain. His stepmother had not only killed him, she had carried his remains across the country, hoping to make him disappear forever. The truth, however, was about to rise to the surface thousands of miles away, under the dark waters of a Florida river. For nearly 2 months, the nation watched as Gannon Storch's face appeared on news broadcasts, posters, and social media feeds. Hope had dimmed, but it hadn't died. His parents Ole and Landon clung to the belief that maybe, just maybe, he was still alive somewhere. But investigators were no longer searching for a missing boy. They were searching for a body. In March 2020, that body would finally surface, over 1,300 miles away from the family's Colorado home. A construction worker inspecting a bridge near Pace, Florida, noticed something strange lodged under the structure. It was a dark suitcase, battered by current, wedged against a piling. When authorities pulled it from the water, the smell told them everything before they even unzipped it. Inside, wrapped in bedsheets, lay the small, decomposed remains of an 11-year-old boy. Dental records would confirm what everyone already feared: it was Gannon. The autopsy revealed a level of violence that stunned even veteran investigators. Gannon had been stabbed 18 times. For blunt force injuries marked his body. His skull was fractured, and he had been shot once in the jaw. Each wound told a story of rage, of a child's final moments filled with terror and confusion. Prosecutors would later describe it as an act of pure evil, deliberate and merciless. Detectives now had the missing pieces. The evidence trail traced Gannon's final journey, from his bedroom in Colorado Springs to the back of Letitia's Volkswagen, to a temporary dumping site near Highway 105, and finally across the country in a rented van. Somewhere along the route, Letitia had driven with her 17-year-old daughter beside her, the suitcase in the back, pretending that nothing was wrong. When they reached Florida, they checked into a hotel just 3 miles from the bridge where Gannon's body would be found. Investigators believed that in the middle of the night, while her daughter slept, Letitia quietly took the suitcase, loaded it into her van, and drove to the Escambia River Bridge. She parked, got out, and in the darkness, threw the suitcase over the side, hoping the current would carry it out to the Gulf of Mexico, never to be seen again. But nature, like truth, has a way of resurfacing. When word reached Colorado that Gannon's remains had been found, the community that had searched for him fell silent. The vigils turned to memorials. The posters that once read missing were replaced with candles, drawings, and the words "Fly High G Man" for his mother, Landon. The discovery was both a relief and an unbearable confirmation. Her little boy was no longer lost. He had been taken in the most horrific way imaginable. As the investigation unfolded, more disturbing details emerged. Letitia had spent the days after the murder lying to everyone around her: police, her husband, her daughter, and even her own brother. She had washed her car, cleaned the house, and Googled ways to remove bloodstains. She had coordinated interviews with detectives while Gannon's body sat inside her car, and after she was arrested, she still couldn't stop scheming. In jail, she allegedly tried to orchestrate an escape, telling another inmate that she had measured herself to fit through a window and planned to use a broom handle to break the glass. It was the same defiance that had driven every lie, every manipulation, every desperate attempt to stay in control. But control was slipping away. By the time her case went to trial in 2023, the story of Letitia Storch had become one of the most haunting in Colorado history. The courtroom was packed with reporters, grieving relatives, and members of the public who had followed every headline for 3 long years. The defense did not deny that she had killed Gannon. Instead, they pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Letitia's attorneys claimed she had suffered a psychotic break and that she was not mentally sound when the killing occurred. They brought in Dr. Dorothy Lewis, a psychiatrist known for her work on violent offenders, who testified that Letitia had dissociative identity disorder, multiple personalities that took control of her actions during moments of extreme trauma. According to the defense, Letitia wasn't murdering her stepson that night. She was, in her fractured mind, killing demons. But the prosecution dismantled the insanity plea piece by piece. They called witnesses from the Colorado Mental Health Institute, where Letitia had undergone evaluations. Those doctors agreed she had personality disorders, narcissistic, and borderline traits, but emphasized that she knew exactly what she was doing. She could distinguish right from wrong. She had planned, executed, and covered up the murder in a methodical way. To prove it, prosecutors played recordings of phone calls between Letitia and her husband, captured before her arrest. In one, she told him, "My mind was completely gone," then shifted the blame, accusing him of treating her like a criminal. Each word dripped with manipulation, a reminder of how she had tried to control every narrative around her. They also presented evidence from her search history, meticulous, deliberate, and damning. She had searched for car rentals before the murder. She had looked up how long blood takes to dry and how to clean it from walls. She had texted her daughter, asking her to buy trash bags and baking soda. These were not the actions of someone lost in psychosis. They were the steps of someone trying to erase a crime. The trial lasted 5 weeks. Each day, the courtroom filled with unbearable tension. Jurors watched hours of footage, listened to tearful testimony, and saw the photographs no one should ever have to see. Gannon's father, Al, sat through it, all his uniformed posture, betraying nothing until the verdict neared. When he spoke, his words broke the silence. He described his son as pure light, a child who still loved his stepmother, even when she didn't love him back. He said he trusted her, and that trust is what killed him. The defense tried to humanize Leteka, painting her as a woman broken by trauma, not evil. They urged the jury to separate vengeance from justice, to understand that mental illness could distort reality. But the prosecution's closing argument left the room in stillness. District Attorney Michael Allen told the jurors, this was not madness, this was malice. He reminded them of the drive across the country, the hotel stay, the river, the lies. He asked them to imagine the fear of an 11-year-old boy as he faced someone he trusted most. When the jury returned on May 8, 2023, they found Leteka Stoch guilty on all counts. First-degree murder after deliberation, first-degree murder of a child by a person in a position of trust, tampering with a deceased human body, and tampering with physical evidence. Leteka sat motionless as the verdict was read, staring blankly ahead. No tears, no reaction, just silence. During sentencing, Judge Gregory Werner addressed her directly. His voice, measured but heavy, filled the courtroom. Your conduct within this case, he said, demands the maximum punishment that I can impose under Colorado law. The facts here are the most horrific I have ever seen. He sentenced her to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. There would be no appeals, no second chances, no mercy. As Leteka was led away, Al and Landon sat side by side, two parents forever bound by grief, staring into the space where their son's life had been. The courtroom emptied slowly, but the weight of the case lingered like a shadow. Outside, reporters stood in the cold spring air, their voices subdued as they delivered the news. Justice, at last, but at a cost that could never be repaid. In the years since, Gannon's story has become a chilling reminder of the darkness that can hide behind familiar faces. His life, a small, gentle spark in a cruel storm, was extinguished by someone who was supposed to protect it. And yet, even in death, he became a symbol of truth's endurance, of a community that refused to stop searching, and of a justice system that followed every lie until it found the body it was meant to silence. Leteka Stoch will spend the rest of her life behind bars. But for those who loved Gannon, there is no closer, only the quiet ache of what could have been. Somewhere in Colorado Springs, on the streets where he once played, the echoes of his laughter still linger, carried by the wind through the pine trees, a reminder that innocence can be fragile, and evil can look like love until it reveals its face.